The 12 steps and the science of mind, that's our conversation today. And I'm so honored to be sharing this, and it feels like we're in great service together to our new Vision Center mission, that we teach spiritual living and we live spiritual teaching. And so the purpose of today's message is several-fold. So one is, I'm really eager for every one of you to have a deeper understanding of these two beautiful spiritual traditions. The 12 steps, which come from the Alcoholics Anonymous tradition, which is a spiritual approach to addiction that has been adopted by a variety of different, literally millions of people over the last 50 plus years. And the science of mind tradition, which religious science is the spiritual tradition that centers like the New Vision Center are based on. So by having a deeper understanding of what these traditions are and how they are distinct and complementary, that's valuable to you in many ways for you to be a living person who is culturally and traditionally respectful of another tradition. That's something that really is a high value here, that we know and understand other traditions, and that by that respect, we create a greater sense of understanding and welcoming for people that come to a center like this, and that also if someone at a center like this wants to go out and go deeper into a tradition like a 12-step tradition, they get to be supported. So understanding is one of our goals. But I will tell you, that's a little bit like doing a book report. And you all aren't just book report people, are you? No, you're living this stuff. So the other big idea for today is, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for you? What does it mean for the people you love? What does it mean for your spiritual practice? So I encourage you, whether you're a person who's been on a path of sobriety, or whether you're an individual who knows someone who has a challenge with an addiction of a behavior or a substance or a recurring thought that won't leave, or it finds something in your own life that is longing for a healing, so you really can get a gem out of what we work with today for yourself. Does that sound good? All right. And I brought some wonderful tools and really, was prayerful about this. So you'll see on the next slide the symbols of Alcoholics Anonymous and the symbols of the science of mind. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context for those of you that this might be new to. So I should also say that keeping the traditions and respecting the traditions that are in these various programs, I want to say right up front, I am not an official spokesperson for anything, for Alcoholics Anonymous, for the science of mind. I actually have no official, it's like I'm not speaking from official standing. I am speaking from, education, but I also want, some of you are pretty savvy, I also want to give you a little context of where I'm coming from. So this is my Alcoholics Anonymous big book. You can see by the level of usage that I didn't get it just by doing a book report, okay? So God willing, one day at a time, it's been 22 years and 364 days since I last had a drink, so it's like, just a beautiful part of my own journey. Thank you for that. And, I was really touched by Paula from last week, sharing her heart and herself. So if you weren't here last week and you missed Paula Shoup's talk, definitely get on the live stream. Because what she did is she shared her heart, and part of what she shared, which is so beautiful, is that the things that are the most challenging for us become the greatest gifts of our lives. So as appropriate here, I'm going to share a little bit about my own journey from, I had, like many people have, I drank at first because it was fun, and then it was fun with problems, and then it was problems. And I had to find a solution, and it was really clear that my own hard work and smarts and discipline and more hydration and all of that wasn't going to help. I needed a spiritual solution. So I've had that experience, and that's part of what I'll be sharing with you all. And then I also want to say, that my own journey with the science of mind, again, this is my original book. So this is from, when I was at the Agape Center 1993. You can see it opens to chapter 16, which is a good place to start, Principles of Successful Living. And my own experience with the science of mind, again, is not abstract. I'm going to be sharing my own experience as well as teaching ideas for all of us. All right, so that gives you a little context. And many of you know this, but I realize there are some folks who may be brand new to us or don't have this information, so I'm going to give a little bit of history. Alcoholics Anonymous is defined as a fellowship of men and women who come together looking for a spiritual solution to the problem of alcoholic drinking. And Alcoholics Anonymous was first created in the 1930s when an alcoholic named Bill, who was a New York stockbroker, had found through his own research and spiritual experience, had become sober, but he was traveling to Ohio and heard the clinks of the glasses in the bar nearby, felt the craving for a drink, and knew that he needed something else to stay sober, to not take a drink that day. And what came to him was, I need to help and find another alcoholic. And there's a beautiful story of him grabbing his nickels and going to a phone and dialing from a directory in this hotel lobby a group of ministers to try to find another drunk. And he found a minister who said, because it's usually a minister who can find you a drunk, right? He found a minister who was able to say, we found someone who could use some help, and Bill W. went and visited Dr. Bob, and that was the beginning of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And through their experience of practicing spiritual principles together and sharing the message of how they did it with others, this tradition was born. And what's beautiful about Alcoholics Anonymous, and you can see in that symbol, recovery is the bottom core, and recovery is the 12 steps, which is a spiritual discipline. And because I wanted to be respectful, in one of the slides you'll actually see the full 12 steps, and I'll speak a little bit about the essence of what that is, but that's the spiritual recovery is the one basis. And then unity is fellowship and the traditions. And what's beautiful about the 12-step traditions, which has also been followed in traditions like Al-Anon for families of alcoholics and many other programs, so Overeaters Anonymous and Codependents Anonymous and other programs over the years, is this idea with unity of a common welfare and a singleness of purpose when people come together. So one of the things that's really beautiful about a really inspiring 12-step meeting, and I've been in them in Santa Monica, and they're happening today in Cave Creek and Ahwatukee and Central Phoenix and wherever you go, is that you might be sitting there in a chair, and next to you is someone who probably slept in their car last night, and next to you on the other side is, a movie star. And it doesn't matter, those professions don't matter. We're all here together because we want to know that there's a higher power, a spiritual approach that can help our seemingly just hopeless human problem. So fellowship is a big piece, the unity, that's a big piece of the 12-step traditions. And the other is service. So one of the things that's very beautiful about the 12-step programs and here comes an opinion, so take it or leave it, one of the things I think many spiritual traditions can learn from the 12-step programs is the power of service. That the way I stay sober is I help somebody else. And in our centers like New Vision Center, one of the beautiful ways that we can model a 12-step program is to say, you know what? I came here because I was lonely and lost and felt completely separated from the God, a punitive God in my childhood. And what I discovered here was love and community and fellowship and education, and I changed my life, and now I want to make sure that for the next person who needs that, the doors are open. So that's my little so that's like that. Because I will tell you, I did things that were inconvenient in order to, so that I could stay sober. So it wasn't always convenient to drive from where I lived in West LA to pick up this girl in Gardena and take her up to Malibu Saturday night. But it wasn't about, is it convenient? It was about let me do what I need to do so that this can be there for the next person. So something really beautiful in that element of service. So that's kind of just an overview of what Alcoholics Anonymous is. Now, what's beautiful about the science of mind tradition is there's a lot of, and some of you, there's a lot of questions people will ask. did Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind, know Bill W., one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous? And I'm going to let you all discover that. It's a bit of an urban legend. Some people will say, Reverend Casey said he went to the Toronto, Canada, AA office and saw a picture of the two of them together, but that picture has never been discovered, So it's a little bit like, there's a little bit of a urban legend feeling to whether or not they knew each other, but we'll get a little side by side here. So Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind, was born in the late 1800s, as was Bill Wilson, and Ernest Holmes made his transition in 1960, Bill Wilson 1970, and Ernest Holmes has been relation of philosophy, how does life get to be the way it is, religion, what is the nature of God, and science, particularly metaphysical science, how does life become the way it is through unseen laws. So Ernest Holmes was a great correlator, and he studied ancient teachings, but also was reading William James and Mary Baker Eddy and Thomas Troward. Later, when Ernest Holmes was speaking in the 1950s, he was correlating to Carl Jung and to other psychological teachings. So his education and teaching very much correlated. So Bill Wilson and others in Alcoholics Anonymous, great seekers, and they were reading and sending people to read Emmett Fox, a divine science minister in New York, reading his Sermon on the Mount, William James, Varieties of Religious Experience. They're all reading the same thing. I think if all this was happening today, Ernest Holmes and Bill Wilson would be retweeting each other, okay? And I think they would be like Deepak and Oprah doing meditation things together, probably, right? But back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, there wasn't kind of the, there wasn't the internet, so it's a little bit harder to discover exactly whether or not they crossed paths. There is a beautiful, wonderful thing that happened in 1940. So in 1940, Jack Alexander wrote an article about Alcoholics Anonymous in the Saturday Evening Post, which became this beautiful opening for people who were struggling with alcoholism, who could not stop drinking, and not just could not stop drinking as in like a little health problem, but it was crippling their lives, destroying their families, preventing them from their professional expression, really ruining people's lives, and they found that there could be a solution. So that was a really powerful thing in 1940. And this is a little booklet that is by Ernest Holmes called Alcoholism, Causes and Cures from the Viewpoint of the Science of Mind. It's a reprint of a 1940 Science of Mind magazine article that Ernest Holmes wrote about alcoholism. And what's precious in it is there's little phrases in here. There's 1,000 forms of fear, which is exactly what it says in the big book. And there's other elements that are in Ernest Holmes' writing that feels really resonant. So that's a little bit of the historical perspective. Phew. It's a lot of information, but that helpful to people? Get a little context? Yeah, all right, good. So I took all of that and kind of opened up my heart, and I've got a couple of quotes that I want to share with you that I hope you will open your heart and mind about how these traditions come together and what this can mean for you and me. So you'll see here, Ernest Holmes says, "We should have no objection to any form of healing, for anything that helps to overcome suffering is good, whether it be a pill or a prayer. We believe in any method which produces results, for each has its place in the whole." And part of what I catch in that I want us to really be alive to, is the science of mind is what's called open at the top, which means that the big ideas, there's one life, that life is God, and there's a law that acts upon our consciousness to create conditions, that those two big ideas are large enough to contain a variety of people's practices, which is what you see when you come to a center like the New Vision Center. It's like you can have a little Course in Miracles, and there's a real love group, and we'll do a Diksha ceremony, and there's the music may be Sufi, like lots of different things happening, partly because there's an openness to the form and the worship that's really quite beautiful. So that's meant to be inclusive. So one of the things that's also a part of that is that someone who's in the science of mind teaching who may feel, I'm so challenged by an addictive behavior that I want to explore if a 12-step approach will work for me, that person's really loved and encouraged. That's part of what I want to just create for us here, invite you into. And then here's a beautiful quote from the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. Of course, it's from the chapter called We Agnostics, which is the most spiritual chapter in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. So from We Agnostics, we get, as soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. And to me, that has the essence of the really beautiful, spiritual, just miracle that is in Alcoholics Anonymous and the other 12-step traditions is this, that at a time when it wasn't quite as culturally popular to say like, oh, you make up what your spiritual thing is, at a time when religion maybe, culturally was a little bit more defined, like, someone would be of this religious faith or fallen away from it, a group of people came together and realized that to have a higher power defined by the individuals, that you get to say, what does a higher power mean to you, was this deeply, spiritually respectful and inviting thing. And one of the just beauties about reading in the Big Book is you get to see that names for the divine include higher power, creative intelligence, wisdom, God, mother, father, cause. And there's something really just beautiful about that. And so part of what the invitation is for our brothers and sisters from the 12-step tradition is to be able to come to a center like this and to be able to practice the 11th step, seeking through prayer and meditation to improve conscious connection with the divine, to go deeper into our experience of the oneness of God. All right, so that gives a little bit of the openness, heart and mind. We're going to take a look at the 12 steps, and then we're going to take a look at the Declaration of Religious Science Principles. And even before we look at the 12 steps, I want to talk a little bit about, what is addiction? Why is there addiction? And I got some wonderful counseling from a friend who gave me this gem in between services. So, addiction, addictive behavior, craving, compulsion, things that feel like they separate us from the divine, have us suffer when those things get in the way of our full expression in life. So one person may drink for social viviality, or whatever that word is. Like they're socially happy and it's fun for them, not a big deal. And then another person, their desire for the drink becomes a craving or an allergy to the body or something that they have to do, that they have a desire for that they cannot fix, cannot assuage, cannot overcome. And when that becomes a problem, and usually you know when it becomes a problem, or your friends can tell you it becomes a problem, or the boss that just let you go can tell you when it becomes a problem, right? Or the lives that you really seriously destroy, it becomes a problem. When it becomes a problem, it's really helpful to look at what's underneath that craving. You see, anytime we're desiring something, and this is definitely an Ernest Holmes idea of libido, is that within us that wants to express, that is God, is always seeking expression. And that when we're often going for a high or going for a distraction, is what we're really going for is the ultimate high, our oneness with the divine, the bliss of our union with Spirit. And that we'll sometimes settle for the substance, the behavior, the thing in between that, because we think that'll get us what we ultimately want. And this is this is the reason when you go and see a practitioner and you ask a question like, I want my perfect job, or where's my perfect beloved partner? And a good practitioner's like, oh, honey, we will pray about that. Now, what's the quality of being you're really looking for in that area, right? Because the person will always want to know, what do you really want? Oh, you want creativity or peace or freedom or beauty or truth. So part of what becomes really healing is to realize that when someone is in addictive behavior, is to realize that that addictive behavior contains within it a yearning for something greater. And that can partly be what helps to create compassion, where you can love the individual and not like the behavior, but also see that a spiritual experience can be there. And that's really one of the reasons why people can have a spiritual awakening and be able to, one day at a time, refrain from a behavior, stay disconnected from it, choose differently. All right. So let's look at the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not going to read these to you, but I'm going to let you just kind of feel that they're up there, and if it helps you to read them, that's fine. If it helps you to just have a sense of love and appreciation for them, enjoy. And what I want to say about my own experience of working the 12 steps is that, I was definitely a smarty pants, good girl, firstborn, did well in school, I had all that stuff going on. And when I took my first drink, it was like this relief from that kind of outer thing. And what emerged for me was a combination of things. It was like all of the shame and the upset and the lack of self-worth that was underneath that got a chance to kind of be handled a little bit. But what also happened for the next 15 years was, you see, I was a good girl by day and a bad girl by night, and it was kind of charming at first, and then it became not so charming. And then I had a bunch of experiences that would absolutely let you know I was a bad girl. And I had to kind of manage them and hide them, and I still could get jobs and stuff, but I had secrets, and by the time it was, August 1990, I'd been exposed to all of the different kind of support groups, and I was knowledgeable about this stuff. But there's a phrase that says that every true alcoholic is always seeking to either control and enjoy her drinking. And you see, for a long time I enjoyed it, and then I tried to control it, but I never did both at the same time. And by the end, when it became clear I need to stop, I had what was absolutely called a moment of clarity, which is there is no way I cannot drink without help. And it was very clear that the help was going to come from a higher power. So that moment for me, it was a sense of demoralization, but it was also, and isn't it true, the best thing that ever happened to me. Could not have had the relationship I have, couldn't have had the life I have, wouldn't be a minister. None of it, except for that moment. So that, I think, is like that urgency and clarity was a gift to me from the 12 steps. And I think that's one of the things that has had me to this day, you won't ever hear me ever criticizing anybody's religious tradition or spiritual tradition, even if I don't agree with it or I don't like it or I don't like the way they say it, because if it works for someone, if it turns them to God, then I am a yes for that, even if it's not my path. So because I just know what it's like to have been lost and now I'm found. And so what happens when an individual then says, I'm going to take the 12 steps, there's this admission of powerless over the behavior, and there's I must have a spiritual connection. And then and that's steps 1 through 3, and then there's the wonderful house cleaning of 4 through 9, where you write out your inventory of the behaviors and what happened and what's done, and you become willing to have the defects removed in collaboration with your higher power. You make amends or changes for the things that have happened in the past. And then someone who's living a robust 12-step program lives his or her life in 10, 11, and 12. So step 10, they're taking a regular inventory and, when wrong, promptly admitting it. and they're deepening spiritually. So step 11 is seeking through prayer, meditation, through spiritual practice to improve their conscious connection with the divine. And then they're being of service to others, always looking, how can I give back? How can I reach out my hand to be there for another? And that technology, it's pretty beautiful to think that over 2 million people have been healed by that technology from alcoholism, and then millions more from all the other behaviors or other things. Like literally millions of people have found healing this way. So what I would kind of ask you to consider is, where in my life can the technology of surrender, inventory, change, and prayerful daily living, where can that technology be beneficial to me in my own life? Because I think there's something here for all of us. And then I'm going to go on and go to the Declaration of Principles. So these are our science of mind and spirit principles. And for those of you that know religious science, again, I'm not going to read them all. I wanted to be respectful to just have the Ernest Holmes Declaration of Principles, have them all there. Is that really what we teach and believe in religious science is two big ideas. There's one life, that life is God, and that we call the love or the unity or the oneness. And that there's law that consciousness creates, that the way God operates is from the invisible into the visible. And those ideas are rich, full ideas for a lifetime of study. And one of the things that feels so valuable to individuals who come to the religious science teaching is to be sure that, and it's one of our declarations, is that the presence of God, see, we really believe that God is an infinite presence, that it's not just a being in the sky kind of taking notes on your behavior. We really believe that God is an infinite presence, loving, eternal, invisible, creative, and yet it is the natural desire of every human being to have a personal relationship with God. Because if not, there's a sense of loneliness and separation that happens if it just becomes this abstract principle. So we really believe that the indwelling presence of the divine is a personal relationship to each one. And that's something I find that people who really deepen their spirituality have a sense that when I close my eyes, like Jeff led us in the meditation before service, when I close my eyes, Glenn said it too, it's the sweetness of the divine within that is richly personal to me. And that's found through spiritual practices like our prayer and our meditation and our chanting and our service. We also believe that conditions like addiction, conditions like suffering, conditions like financial problems, conditions like a broken heart that appear in the external can be healed through the power of prayer, through the power of aligning ourselves to spiritual truth, because the law is the power that heals. And so one of the big technologies here in religious science is spiritual mind treatment, is the power of prayer. And in the Ernest Holmes article about alcoholism, it's really precious, is he talks about one of the ways to cure alcoholism or any kind of addictive behavior is to work psychologically to understand where it came from and to dissect the small c causes and understand how did this get here, and then one by one change those beliefs from a psychological standpoint. But none of you will be surprised. So then Ernest Holmes goes on to say, that could take a long time and be kind of expensive and cumbersome. And rather, the spiritual solution is to, in this moment, work to know that wholeness is present, that freedom is possible, because that's really what ultimately heals. And I think that's a nuance of understanding that that's really a vital one, is you could have a spiritual experience and a healing right now. You don't need to wait till you thoroughly understand the problem. All right. So with all of that in place, this is a pretty sophisticated group, so I'm gonna give you a couple of the conundrums or the deeper questions about perfect and powerless together, some of the things that are worthy of contemplation. So you can see I've got 3 questions here, and then I'm going to give you 3 practices for going home. So if we are perfect, whole, and complete, as we would say in Science of Mind, we're perfect, whole, and complete, we're made in the image and likeness of the divine, well then how can we be powerless over people, places, things, substances? How can those two things be put together? And the way I think about it is it's like a paradox, not a contradiction. You see, our spiritual nature is perfect, whole, and complete. And here in the material human realm of effects, we have challenges. And those challenges, those conditions, those substances, those things can only be solved by a higher power. Human power doesn't solve every problem and issue. So my personality and my smarts and my hard work did not allow me to stop drinking. I had to go to a higher power. So I had a human powerlessness over those behaviors. And that, to me, feels like how I can land with that. The next one's an interesting one. What does it mean when someone says, I'm an alcoholic? So if you go to a 12-step meeting, you might hear, my name is Ralph, I'm an alcoholic, and then you'd hear, that's right, you'd hear, hi, Ralph. You all know. And some would say, is Ralph defiling his I am by putting alcoholic next to it? You know, because our words are powerful and what we claim about ourselves is true. And the way that I've come to this is when I say in the right place and the right time that I'm an alcoholic, what I mean is I'm here for a singleness of purpose. I am not my resume. I am not my pedigree. I am not anything else. What I am right here, right now, is I'm here for sobriety. I'm here to be of support to others. And it is an honor for me to say that. Not a defiling of my I am name. It's like a remembrance of something so precious and humble and factual. And it just keeps me so grounded in the truth. So I found my way with that phrasing that really works for me. And you'll hear people identify themselves in all different ways, and I'm totally down with however you'd want to language that. But if that's an issue for you, really be with it so you know what you're talking about. And then the final one, and we could do a 3-week seminar on this, but I'm conscious we got a town hall later today, right? Can alcoholism be cured? Well, in an infinite universe where anything is possible, of course, alcoholism can be cured, limbs can grow back, financial challenges can be resolved, political wars can be dissolved, like anything is possible in an infinite universe. And sometimes that question is asked by people, I think, who just want to be able to drink like a gentleman, if you know what I mean. So I think people are like, can I cure my alcoholism so I can drink like everybody else? And in many ways, the way I've kind of come to that is, look, my faith in God and my higher power is greater than my fear of alcoholism. And one day at a time, I choose to be sober. That's how it feels to me. So I don't have, sometimes people will have a disease idea of an addiction where they are almost like operating in fear that thing will overtake them. And that may empower, but for me that wouldn't work. I more say I'm here to, every day I serve God. And the high idea of the divine for me is to be sober. All right. So you're going to go home with 3 nuggets from this, I'm hoping. One is as a community and as an individual who's in spiritual practice, whether you're here, I'm so touched, are people here for the first time, or whether you're a longtime member of a center like this, you can be playing with the paradoxes of what does it mean for someone to be perfect, whole, and complete here in our Science of Mind teaching, and then also to be respectful and inclusive of all of the different modalities that are out there for people to flourish with. And then I absolutely encourage you, if you have any issue where you feel like, I'm in a behavior that doesn't work for me, but what I really want is, what I really want here, the high I really want, the bliss I really want, it's the bliss of the divine. So I really encourage you to really deepen in your own personal relationship with God so that the thing that you desire becomes uplifted. And then finally, I think we can all learn from different spiritual traditions. One of the things I really love about the 12-step traditions is the idea of inspiration and action. So, at one day at a time, you put down the drink or the behavior, you go to a meeting, you help another, you call your sponsor, you get on your knees and pray, you do an action which then evokes the inspiration in you. You don't have to wait till you feel like it in order to take the action. Here in the Science of Mind, we'll sometimes say we treat first, we go to prayer first, and then we move our feet. And it feels to me like there's a way, too, that every bit of action on the outer, and this will inspire for those of you that are at the town hall meeting today, action taken on the outer is spirit in expression. And it's not worse or better than, a spiritual realization. So there's something really beautiful about putting inspiration and action together. Wow. So you all did good. We did good here today, yes? This has been helpful? Yeah? All right. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good. So we're going to take this juicy stuff and go to prayer. So if you will, just relax the body, close the eyes, and we're going to pray together. So how sweet it is that we turn to the infinite presence of God, that we just surrender our awareness to that place of wholeness, freedom, love, right action. There is one life. That life is God. That life is all life. It is the ultimate expression of bliss and joy and truth and beauty. And it lives and gives and expresses in, through, and as all of life. So I remember who I am. That I, Karen, am at one with this infinite loving presence. And I'm honored to be in recognition for all of the beautiful beings here at the New Vision Center for Spiritual Living, for brothers and sisters in all places, for all beings. What I recognize is we are one with God. And from that awareness, I speak a word this day. What I accept is that there is such a precious and beautiful way that we are deepened into a beautiful realization of our oneness with the divine, and that realization is a healing to every block, challenge, issue that wants for healing in our lives and in all lives. And I'm also grateful to acknowledge that the prayers of our New Vision prayer list are answered with love and yes. So I'm just acknowledging for Trish and Lynn, Maureen and Kathy, for Debbie, Ted, Donna, and Connie, for Jody, Billy, Tom, Joanne, for Natasha, Sandra, Alex, Philip, Chris, and Kathy, for Sayoko, Vince, Annette, Samba, Billy, Jane, for Beverly, Paul, Doug, and Athena, for Lane and Brian and Jeffrey, Stacy, Mike, Jason, and David, for Fern, John, Susan, and Joni, for Sarah, Jim, Cheryl, and Ariana, for Chad, Peter, and Ron, for Michael, Bronwyn, and Bentley, for Angelina, Dallas, Javier, and Tom, for Mary Allen, Will, Tom, and Cheryl, for Maureen, Chris, Karen, and Dennis, for Kevin, Pat, Matt, Becky, for Dana, Terry, and Hope. I just know the love and the light and the truth and the wholeness of God is here and now. And I'm so grateful that this prayer is answered yes. It blesses all by the power of the law. So we let it go, we let it be, we release, and we anchor this truth together by saying together,